But joining us now, Matt Monger, as we've been previewing here for the last hour. And Matt, how in the world are you? We haven't talked to you in a while.
Life is good. Married, little kids, and here we go. It's all fun and good.
I know, being the football guy that you are, you've been very aware of what's going on here in Stillwater. You still are. And we're going to talk defense. I don't know if you've heard some of the talk shows up in that area, but, the favorite topic to kick around now is, man, is this defense that Jim Knowles has now is as good as the group, say, from 81 through 84? It's just kind of friendly banter. I would say both of them were pretty good.
Yeah, well, first and foremost, I'd probably say the most valuable player on that defense is Jim Knowles. But
probably.
Yeah, he's very impressed, and it's interesting. I actually know a handful of guys from his past who he still stays in contact with.
Really?
And that speaks a whole lot about a coach. He doesn't leave the bodies behind. He takes those relationships with him. And I've got a lot of respect for him. I don't know him personally, but I've been very impressed. As far as the defense, yeah, I don't know. I mean, there's a reason they're trying to compare him to the defense that we had when we were there. But I think if you read most of the articles that come out, they will say things like allowing the fewest yards per play since 1984 or since all I know is it's fun to see good Oklahoma State defense alive and well and excited. I just think that's fantastic.
Yeah, I try to tell people, you know what? You don't have to apologize for winning with defense. I mean, you don't have to take secondary positions, say, I don't know about this team. I mean, it all goes into winning, right? And if you got a good defense like this team has had for a couple of years, you always got a chance to win a ball game no matter what you do on offense.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, the heart of a team, I'm convinced, is on the defense. That sets the tone for everything.
Well, let's talk about the guys that you played with. And I'm always free, and it doesn't take much for me to start throwing names out of the guys from 81, 80, 82, 83, 84, 85. I mean, there were some legends that played here defensively. But you were on, I mean, you can go through your time here, and you played with some of the best that ever suited up here.
Well, I think it's interesting as you look back. I mean, if you look at that 1984 defensive squad, they allowed 12.3 points per game. Mm-hmm. Unbelievable. In the era of smash mouth football, when everybody was running the ball, the 1983 squad allowed 5 rushing touchdowns all season. So, I love this defense that I'm watching at Oklahoma State right now, but I don't know how you line up anybody against what was there at 83, 84. In fact, on that team, that 83 team, there were 21 guys that played professional football.
Mm-hmm.
You know many of them that were drafted in the NFL. I think that one year we had 17 drafted, but that doesn't even include guys like Rodney Harding, who I'm convinced is the most underappreciated star that ever went to Oklahoma State. I mean, he practically raised Leslie O'Neal and John Washington. And Rodney was fantastic. You want to talk about a guy with character and leadership. So the names are long. People remember some of them. They don't remember others, but a long list of greats that came through that era, and it's fun reflecting back at it.
And the numbers speak for themselves. And let's face it, we're in a different day and age now. Throw it around, play the whole field, wide field. You don't play between the tackles, between the hashes and all that. I understand all that. But good is good, right? And you are good with what you have to be good against. And I don't apologize for what I saw in the early to mid '80s defensively.
And you shouldn't. Should be proud of it. Those kind of eras kind of set the stage for what's going to come next.
You were right there in the middle, literally. You got a chance to see some of these guys perform. Vividly in your mind, could you, and this is putting you on the spot, could you kind of recreate across the front, the backers, who was behind you? Do you remember them that vividly now?
Yeah, I think, I think you got to start before me if you really want to talk about Oklahoma State linebackers. I think you really, of course, you can back up a long time in history, but I think you really need to back up to John Corker. I would tell you John Corker's the most talented linebacker that ever went through Oklahoma State.
Amen.
Wasn't the most productive, but he was the most talented. This guy had just unbelievable skills. Work ethic wasn't probably what it was at that point. You know, some men are young and haven't matured yet and haven't figured all that out, but unbelievable. And then you can't line up that linebacker category without throwing in guys like Ricky Young, or who I think might have been the best all-around linebacker ever at Oklahoma State, which in my opinion was, well, I don't know, should I call people out? Mike Green. I think Mike Green was fantastic.
I'm glad you said that, because I brought that up the other day. When we're starting to talk about greats in defense, and that's always a dangerous subject. It depends on, it's relative to how old you are. But there's no doubt in my mind, Ricky Young, Mike Green are at the top of the linebacker list, and they hardly ever get mentioned.
Yeah, and I don't understand that. You know, Ricky was dependable. Mike was all over the field. I personally think Mike was probably the best. If you look at productivity, you know, you've got to look at Mike's numbers. My numbers for a single season are up there with anybody ever that gone to Oklahoma State. But the stories the numbers don't always tell the story. I mean, you take a look at, let's take a look at this Rodriguez kid. I mean, his numbers are really good. You know, they're not going to look like Mike Green's numbers, but they're really good. But here's the value that the guy in the stands doesn't see when he looks at this Rodriguez kid. The versatility. He doesn't understand that, you know, the ability to take this Malcolm out and put him out over a wide receiver opens up the defense to do all sorts of different schemes and tricks and plays. It's unbelievably value, and I think his value in that in the category of versatility, I think buys him an extra 2 or 3 rounds in a draft coming up. Well, so Mike Green had some of that. Big names, absolutely.
What about, you know, and the secondary here gets a lot of attention, and probably rightfully so. There are a lot of guys in the mix, safeties, maybe too deep to the bare minimum. But we had good secondary guys as well. We had safeties on those teams as well, and not to mention, you know, the likes of Mark Moore, Mike Hudson. Those two guys probably would have targeting problems in this day and age because
no
they came at you and let you know right off the bat that's the last time you're coming in here. But nonetheless, tough guys.
Well, if you look at that one team, you had I think you had 21 guys on that one team play professional football. But if you're talking about defensive backs, you had Rod Fisher got drafted. You had Adam Hines get drafted, Ray Polk, Mark Moore. And the ones that's amazing, you know, you can't play without a big toe because you have no balance. Oh, wait a minute. There was Chris Rockins who played 6 years with the Cleveland Browns. Had no big toe.
You know, these guys, and back then, do you buy the – it's not an argument, and we're not arguing about anything here, but do you buy the approach that, you know, well, it was a different day and age, you know. I don't know if those guys could play the width of the field. I don't know if those guys could play covering 40 passes a game. You know, it's nice that they could stop runs. But to me, you were good against what was in vogue at the time, and there's no doubt in my mind you guys could adapt to playing right now if you had to.
Tom, I would tell you that you can't deny the kid who refuses to be denied. I don't care. If a kid has a desire in his heart, skill is insignificant. It doesn't matter. A kid's heart will overcome skill set, conditioning, all of it. So I think you take the right kid who wants to win, who refuses to be denied, and I think he wins regardless of which scheme you put him in. You know,
and areas that you can't overlook either. You had some good coaches, no doubt about that, on the defensive side of the football. Had great leadership there, as they do here. And sometimes those position guys get lost in the shuffle when you're talking about coordinators.
Yeah, no, we were packed with coaching. Just to, you know, when I came in, Jimmy Johnson was a head coach. Pat became head coach. Was a defensive coordinator, became head coach my last year there. My position coach was Reggie Herring, who's still coaching. I think he's a linebacker coach at Denver Broncos today. We were, Paul Jett. We had a long list of them that have fantastic careers. It was something special about that group.
As you look back on your career, and a lot of people, I saw this quote. Well, it wasn't a quote. It was part of the media guide. I think a lot of our fans remember the name Rick Annell, who was probably is.
Cowboy Rick Annell. You got to put him on the list if you're going to talk about OSU linebackers.
That's where I'm going right
and
there.
And the guy, I'm telling you, I love Rick, but he had no skill whatsoever, but he's one of the best that ever played the game at that stadium.
And he's a guy, toughness personified for sure.
Played with heart, unbelievable.
But your name was mentioned in this one area as the most successful walk-on since Rick Annell to make this team and achieve the honors that you achieved. I'm telling you, I don't care if it's 30 years ago that this came out. That is a great compliment in the same breath with a guy like Rick Annell.
I would, I'm a big fan of Rick's. Rick was an inspiration for me. So he was at Oklahoma State when I was in high school. And, I'm thinking to myself, nobody wants to give me a scholarship. And I'm looking at Rick, and I'm thinking, Rick's no bigger than me. He's no faster than me. And he was actually an inspiration to me, and I got to be friends with him later on. And, of course, he's easy to fall in love with. So he is Oklahoma State through and through.
20-plus tackles a game almost was synonymous with you in your latter years here at Oklahoma State. I mean, and again, your nose was around the football all the time, and you just kind of wore some ball carriers out. To me, when I watched you and helped describe the play when you were here, it was kind of the more action, the better for you. You didn't like games where you didn't have a whole lot of action.
No, I love the game. I love the contact. I played with my heart. I kind of incorporated some of that Rick Annell mindset. But I went to that TU game. I've got family and business going on, so I don't get out as much as I want to. But I'm at the TU game, and I'm bragging on the linebacker corps and how good they were doing. And some guy comes up to me and says, "Well, didn't you have 23 or 26 tackles last time you played Tulsa?"
You did.
Yeah, and you feel a little pride about that. But the reality of it is, it was a different game, and the beauty of being Matt Monger is you've got Leslie O'Neal in front of you, John Washington, Rodney Harding. You've got a lot of guys they have to worry about to free you up to go make the plays. So I'd probably get more credit than I deserved.
Well, and you also get the blame when you miss a tackle too. So it works both ways. I don't ever apologize for that. But, 20 tackles and Matt Monger were pretty much synonymous back in the day. And, again, that showed the activity level that you had.
Or at least the hunger. I was, I grew up wanting to be a Cowboy football player, and that's exactly what I did.
Back in your days in Miami, huh? Man.
Miami, Oklahoma. It's a fun little town to grow up in.
I think the first time we ever did, I went back there when we did a feature on a coaching show, I think. I went back to Miami one time, and I don't know, you might have still been there, maybe working or whatever. I forget what it was. But we went back there. Had never been there in all the years I lived in the state of Oklahoma. That was the first time I went back. My grandson played at NEO, and I made about 100,000 trips up there. So I know my way around that town now.
Yeah, it was a fantastic place to grow up. I really enjoyed it. They honored me a few years ago, put me in their Hall of Fame, which really is code for, hey, we have one who didn't go to prison.
Oh, jeez.
I'm just kidding, of course. It's a great little town. That Hall of Fame is an honor, especially since, there's only 6 or 7 of them in, and one of them's a Heisman Trophy winner. Of course, he went to the wrong school, of course.
Tell that story about when you were up there, Switzer was up there honoring.
Yeah, so I did go up. Steve Owens asked me to come up for the ceremony where they unveiled the life-size Heisman Trophy, and Switzer was up there introducing Steve, and it's an audience of 1,500, 2,000 people, and I haven't seen Barry in a decade or more, and I'm listening to him. He's a character, of course, and he's talking about Steve on this one play, going down the sideline for like 63 yards, scoring a touchdown to kind of win the game against Oklahoma State, and then he pauses, and he looks out in the crowd, and he points to me and says, "Matt Monger, there's your Sooner magic." Thanks, Barry.
Thanks a lot for singling it out.
He's fantastic, though. I mean, this guy has a memory like you can't imagine. He remembers everyone and everything about you and your family, and he's an extremely impressive man and just endearing.
I got to ask you this before you get out of here. We mentioned your NFL career. One team that you played with, Buffalo, is doing well. The other team that you played for, the Jets, are not doing very well. So you kind of saw, although neither team was probably as good or bad as they are right now when you joined them.
Yeah, I was lucky. teams were all good when I played there. I think I was in the playoffs every single year I was in the NFL, so it was good. They were all good memories. I don't follow the NFL very closely anymore. For me, it's faith, family, work, and I try to make time for things like Oklahoma State football and things like that interest me. But you got to carve out something, so I kind of have removed most of that professional football from my life at this point. So I just don't follow it that closely.
And it may be a little different than when you were there anyway. But nonetheless, one of those guys you were talking about who came off those defenses back in the day who went to the NFL. Matt, always good to catch up with you, man. It sounds like everything's going well family-wise, I guess.
Life is fantastic. It's wonderful. God is good, and it helps to marry really well.
Always prophetic. You are. Always prophetic. Hey, I appreciate the time, bud, and we'll see you when you get down here to Stillwater.
Stay blessed, my friend.
Okay, thank you, bud. See ya.
Bye-bye.
Matt Monger, again, no telling, one of the great linebackers who ever played the game here at Oklahoma State.